Jonah Cade stood in the sterile glow of Orison Station's diplomatic chamber, the air humming with the low thrum of life support systems. Neutral ground, they called it, a vast, ring-shaped habitat orbiting a nameless gas giant, shared by a dozen species under the Interstellar Council's watchful eye. But neutrality felt like a thin veil today. His fingers tightened around the small, matte black data chip in his palm, its edges worn from months of handling. The Mercy Protocol. His life's work etched into code and compromise, a framework for de-escalation, offering human concessions on border disputes in exchange for Council guarantees against further incursions. It wasn't surrender, it was survival with dignity. Chancellor Elir loomed at the far end of the chamber, his elongated frame draped in the Council's flowing robes of iridescent alloy thread. The Elir's skin shimmered like oil on water, reflecting the holographic displays that floated between them. Maps of contested sectors, casualty tallies from the skirmishes that had already claimed thousands. Elir's multiple eyes, faceted and unblinking, fixed on Jonah with the cold precision of a targeting array. "Chancellor," Jonah began, his voice steady despite the knot in his gut. "Humanity extends this proposal not from weakness, but from a shared interest in stability. The Mercy Protocol outlines phased withdrawals from the outer rims, joint patrols, and reparations for the colonies hit hardest. In return, we ask for a cessation of blockades and recognition of our sovereign claims. This chip contains the full details, encrypted, verifiable by your own systems." He stepped forward, placing the chip on the central dais. The chamber's observers, diplomats from fringe worlds, silent feeds beaming to every corner of Council space, watched without a sound. Jonah's mind raced to Senator Lyle back on Earth, the quiet evenings they'd spent debating clauses over synth coffee. This had to work. If the Council saw mercy as strength, not capitulation, they could pull back from the brink. The liar's mandibles clicked softly, a sound like cracking ice. He didn't touch the chip. Instead, one spindly arm gestured, and a holographic projector hummed to life. "Diplomat Cade," Elir intoned, his voice a layered rasp translated through the station's universal feed. "Your protocol is noted, but the Council requires resolve, not gestures. Humanity's expansions have disrupted the balance. This offer undermines that balance further." Jonah's pulse quickened. "With respect, Chancellor, it's a path to peace. Public endorsement here on Orison would signal unity to—" The projector flared brighter, overriding the chamber's feeds. Footage rolled. Grainy clips of human frigates firing on Council outposts, edited seamlessly with staged explosions blooming over civilian habitats. Jonah's own face appeared in a fabricated clip, his words twisted into a threat. "We will not yield our claims, no matter the cost." It was doctored, a splice of old speeches and simulated audio. Gasps rippled through the observers. "That's not—" Jonah lunged toward the dais, but Elir's guards, hulking Brontari enforcers, shifted into position, their armored bulk a wall of warning. "The refusal is formal and broadcast," Elir declared, his eyes gleaming. "Humanity's proposal is rejected. Let this serve as notice. Further provocations will meet unyielding response." The chamber doors hissed open, and Jonah was ushered out. The chip left abandoned on the dais like discarded refuse. His comm buzzed with alerts, feeds across the galaxy carrying the broadcast, the doctored lies painting him as a warmonger, eroding the fragile trust he'd built. He stumbled into the corridor, breath ragged, the weight of it crashing down. Lyle's face flickered in his mind, the senator's steady hand on his shoulder during late-night revisions. This wasn't just rejection, it was sabotage of the soul of the protocol. And now, with the broadcast rippling out, Every human diplomat would face the fallout, accusations, fractures in alliances. Jonah clenched his fists, the corridor's lights blurring as he fought the urge to scream. Mercy, he'd argued, was the only way to outlast the Council's machine of dominance. But as the station's alarms began to wail faintly in the distance, he wondered if he'd just handed them the justification to crush it all. Lieutenant Rook Hale gripped the railing in the human transit corridor, the vibration of Orison's docking arms thrumming through his boots. He'd come to escort a group of civilian techs back to the shuttle, his sister among them, fresh from a repair stint on the station's outer rings. Alara, with her quick laugh and knack for jury-rigging failing circuits, had insisted on the trip. "One last favor for the fleet," she'd said, hugging him before boarding. Rook's squad flanked him, Marines in light exosuits, eyes scanning the crowds of aliens shuffling through the pressurized tube. The corridor stretched like a vein through the station's underbelly, lined with access hatches and emergency bulkheads. Human banners fluttered from the walls, simple blue fields with the orbital habitat emblem, a reminder of home amid the alien sprawl. Rook's jaw tightened. The rejection broadcast had hit their feeds minutes ago, Ilir's smug face twisting the knife. But duty first. Get Alara and the others out before tensions boiled over. A low rumble built, starting as a deckplate tremor. Rook's hand went to his sidearm. Eyes sharp, he muttered to his squad. Then the world erupted. The explosion tore through the far end of the corridor, a fireball blooming from a sabotaged conduit. Debris sprayed like shrapnel, twisted metal, shattered viewports venting atmosphere. Screams cut the air as the blast wave hurled bodies aside. Rook slammed into the railing, ears ringing, tasting blood from a split lip. He pushed up, vision swimming, and spotted Alara's group ahead. Techs scrambling, but the corridor buckled, a secondary charge ripping open the tube. "Alara!" His voice cracked over the chaos. He charged forward, boots pounding against buckling decking, dodging a falling panel that crushed a Brontari trader. The air grew thin, alarms blaring evacuation protocols. His squad followed, firing suppression rounds at sparking conduits to stem the fires. He reached her just as the bulkhead groaned and gave way. Alara's hand slipped from his grasp, her eyes wide with shock as the vacuum yanked her toward the breach. "Rook!" The seal failed. She was gone. Sucked into the void with a dozen others, their screams silenced in an instant. Rook clawed at the edge, fingers scraping alloy, but the emergency field flickered on too late, shimmering blue across the gap. His chest heaved, bile rising. Sabotage, council work, had to be. The timing, right after the broadcast? No coincidence. His comm crackled. "Lieutenant Hale, report." It was the bridge officer from their shuttle. Rook staggered back, squadmates pulling him from the brink. "Multiple casualties, transit corridor compromised. My sister, she's dead." The words tasted like ash. Loyalty to the uniform had kept him steady through patrols. But this? Alara, who baked protein bars for his squad during long hauls, gone in a flash of engineered hate. "It's the council. They did this. I swear, if I get my hands—" "Stand down, Hale. Evacuate to the shuttle." But the officer's voice held no conviction. Rook's fists balled, the fracture spreading inside him like a hull breach. The council had rejected mercy. Now they'd stolen his blood. No more playing nice. When the call came for payback, he'd be first in line. Commander Mara Voss paced the command deck of the UNS Reliant, the bridge a hive of controlled urgency. Hollow screens flickered with incoming data, the rejection broadcast looping on one, Orison's transit explosion on another, her fleet, 5 destroyers and a carrier, the battered remnants of the outer rim defense, hung in formation just beyond the station's exclusion zone. Crew stations hummed with activity, officers murmuring tactics, but Mara's focus narrowed on the tactical overlay. Red icons pulsed, council patrols closing in. Supply convoys threading through nearby lanes. Damage assessment from Orison? She asked, voice clipped, her utilitarian uniform crisp despite the sweat beading at her temples. Lieutenant Commander Ellis, her XO, glanced up from his console. Civilian casualties mounting, over 20 confirmed in the human corridor. Hale's squad pulled survivors, but it's a mess. And that broadcast, it's painting us as aggressors. Mara's jaw set. Jonah's protocol, her crew, New Harrow's coastal lights flickering in her memory, families she'd sworn to shield. Rigid as she was, diplomacy had its place, but not when it left them exposed. Diplomatic councils inbound on secure channel, patch them through. The hollow flickered, Jonah's face appearing, pale and drawn from the station. Commander, the rejection's a setup. Elir doctored the feeds to provoke us. We need to hold, respond with restraint, appeal to the fringe worlds. Restraint, Mara's voice sharpened, echoing off the bulkheads. A junior officer nearby paused, glancing her way. They just blew a hole in our people, Jonah. My fleet's on the edge of their patrols. If we don't push back, they'll choke our lanes. Jonah leaned closer to the pickup, eyes pleading. The protocol's still viable. Public pressure, no. Mara cut him off, turning to Ellis. Defensive perimeters, full alert. All ships form a wedge formation, shields to maximum on the ventral arcs. The bridge sprang to life, confirmations pinging. She faced the hollow again. I'm authorizing limited reprisals. Target their supply convoys. Non-lethal disruptions. EMP bursts on freighters. Hit their logistics, not their hulls. We force a rethink without escalating to full war. Mara, that's overruling the Council's directive, Jonah protested, but his voice cracked with fatigue. It plays into Elir's hands, and inaction hands him our colonies. She killed the feed, the hollow winking out. Her fear gnawed deeper. Losing command meant losing the habitats, the fragile rings orbiting Earth where her own kin waited. But overruling Jonah, it chipped at the camaraderie they'd built over years of joint ops. Still, civilians first, always. Orders cascaded, pilots scrambling to fighters, gunnery crews calibrating. Mara watched the tactical shift, council icons scattering as her reprisal teams darted out. Small victories bought with precision fire, but as reports trickled in, 2 convoys crippled, goods adrift, she felt the weight. This was the line blurring, Mercy's edge fraying under fire. Sarah Anvik hunched in the dim glow of her covert ops den aboard the shadow frigate Whisper, fingers flying across encrypted paths. The ship ghosted through the asteroid belts fringing Orison's system, her network of informants feeding data in bursts. Sarah's world was shadows, lies to allies, truths buried deep. Her operatives, that ragtag family of hackers, spies, and extractors, depended on her deceptions to stay alive. Losing them to exposure, unthinkable. A ping lit her screen. Intercepted council communique, snagged from a sloppy relay buoy. She decrypted it layer by layer, eyes narrowing. Blockade protocols activating, the message read, stamped with Elir's seal. Target human colonies, New Harrow, Epsilon Drift. Sever trade routes within 48 cycles. No exceptions, starve their resolve. Sarah's breath caught. New Harrow, coastal sprawl, fishing fleets and hydro farms, the kind of place her ops had smuggled aid to during lean times. This wasn't skirmish, it was siege, aimed at breaking spirits before fleets even clashed. Her flaw itched. Manipulate the flow, feed false intel to the council, buy time for evacuations, but risk exposure and her network crumbled. She keyed her comm, voice low. Relay to Voss, blockade inbound, civilian targets locked, coordinates attached. Pausing, she added, options narrow, preemptive window closing. The response came swift from the Reliant, Mara's voice, edged with steel. Understood. Reprisals are live, but this changes the board. Sarah leaned back, the hum of the Whisper's engines. Sarah leaned back in the cramped cockpit of the Whisper, the hum of its engines vibrating through her bones like a persistent ache. The stealth runner's hull was cool against her flight suit, but sweat beaded on her forehead from the recycled air's stale bite. Her network's latest feed flickered on the console. Grainy images from a drone swarm orbiting the blockaded colony of Epsilon Drift. 3 human outposts now cut off like veins severed in a body already bleeding out. The Council's retaliation had come swift after Mara's strike. Supply lines crippled, but at the cost of isolation that strangled civilian lifelines. She rubbed her eyes, the weight of it settling in her gut. Her operatives were family, scattered threads in the web she wove to keep the truth alive. But truth was a fragile thing in blockade shadows. "Pilot," she said into the comm, voice steady despite the knot in her chest. "Plot insertion vector for drift. Low profile. No chatter." "Aye, ma'am," came the reply from the forward bay, where Jax nursed the controls. He was one of hers, a wiry ex-mercenary with scars from the fringe wars that matched her own deceptions. Sarah trusted him because he'd lied to her face once and owned it. Rare honesty in a trade built on shadows. The Whisper slipped through the void, its baffles muffling the ion trail as they ghosted past council pickets. Sarah reviewed the op brief. Extract a cell of informants holed up in Drift's underhive before the blockades turned the colony into a graveyard. But intel whispers said worse. Council enforcers processing prisoners for spectacle. Public executions to break human will. Her flaw gnawed at her. She'd manipulate anyone to save her people, even if it meant feeding them half-truths that tasted like poison. Hours blurred into the black until Epsilon Drift loomed, a jagged rock of a world ringed by council dreadnoughts like wolves circling a lame herd. The Whisper dove into Atmo, cloaked in storm clouds that lashed the hull with rain like gunfire. Sarah geared up in the lockout, mag boots clanking, her pulse rifle slung low. "Team, sync on me, in and out, no heroes." They dropped from the bay on grav chutes, the wind howling as they pierced the thunderheads. Sarah hit the ferrocrete pads first, rolling into the sprawl of New Harrow's outskirts. Wait, no, Drift's underhive, a warren of rusting hab blocks and flickering neon from black market dens. The colony's air reeked of ozone and fear sweat, patrols of Alir shock troops marching in phalanxes, their iridescent armor glinting under sodium lamps. She led the squad through service tunnels, HUD overlay marking the extraction point, a derelict warehouse where her cell waited. But as they neared, blaster fire cracked the night, sharp staccato bursts echoing off the walls. Sarah signaled halt, peering through a grate. In the open square beyond, council guards herded a line of humans toward a raised platform. Prisoners, wrists bound in energy cuffs, faces gaunt from ration starvation. One woman, mid-30s, clutched a child too young to understand the noose drones hovering above. Sarah's breath caught. Not just processing, staging. Holocams orbited, broadcasting to the stars. The lead guard, an Alir with chitinous mandibles clicking in satisfaction, barked orders in their lilting tongue. Witness the cost of defiance. Mercy is fracture, order endures. Her finger hovered over the record implant at her temple. Document it all. Every sob, every plea. This was leverage, raw and bleeding, to force the council's hand or rally human resolve. But extraction first. She whispered into comms. "Flank left, cover fire on my mark. We grab the cell, then ghost." The op went south in seconds. As her team breached the warehouse, alarms wailed. Rookhale, one of her greenest, had peeled off without word. Sarah cursed under her breath, spotting him through the scope. charging the square, rifle blazing, not toward the cell, but straight for a cluster of guards dragging his buddy from the line. Hale's friend, captured weeks back on a botched recon. Orders were clear, no deviations, or the whole network burned. Blasters lit the rain-slicked stone. Hale dropped 2 Elir before a stun bolt clipped his shoulder, spinning him into the mud. Sarah's squad extracted the cell, 4 informants, wide-eyed and hauling data packs, but Hale's stunt drew the noose tight. Patrols swarmed, forcing her team to melt into the alleys, leaving him to the wolves. Back aboard the Whisper as they punched for orbit, Sarah watched the feed. Hale, zip-tied, hauled to a council transport, her network's integrity cracked, just a little. She'd lied to him about the risks, promised backup that never came. Now he paid for her manipulations. In the dim glow of the bridge, Commander Mara Voss stared at the tactical holomap, the blue glow etching lines deeper into her face. The strike on the Council's supply node at Vega Relay had been surgical, human ingenuity at its rawest, drone swarms laced with EMP bursts, slipping past defenses like ghosts in the machine. Logistics crippled, their fleet starved for weeks, but the counterblow landed harder. 3 colonies isolated, Epsilon Drift, Harrow's Reach, and the fringe station at Oberon. Blockades sealing them in, cutting food, meds, power. Mara's hands clenched the console edge, knuckles white. Her crew watched from their stations, the camaraderie forged in fire now laced with doubt. Lieutenant Reyes, her XO, leaned in. "Ma'am, the node's down, but those blockades, civilians are rationing air by now." She nodded, jaw set. Protecting inhabited worlds was her mandate, but rigid math demanded the strike. Devalue restraint when survival hung by threads. Earth's orbitals, her unlosable anchor, flashed vulnerable on the map if they didn't push back. "Authorize the follow-up," she said. Voice like gravel. "Scout patterns, find gaps. We punch through or they starve us out." Reyes hesitated, eyes flicking to the crew. "And the Mercy Protocol?" Jonah's pushing appeals again. Mara's flaw twisted inside. Utilitarianism that saw diplomacy as delay. Protocols a flag in the wind. "We hold the line." She hit the comm, authorizing the order. Defiance earned, not shouted, but the cost echoed in the silence. Across the system, in the sterile halls of the Sol diplomatic enclave, Jonah Cade paced the broadcast chamber, the weight of the data chip burning in his pocket. The Mercy Protocol, his draft, a beacon of restraint amid the spiral, a charred white flag fragment from the first council parley embedded in its core, symbolizing what they could reclaim. But now, with Lyle's resignation fresh, it felt like ash. He'd organized the appeal in hours, a public holocast to the neutrals pleading for new talks. "We extend mercy not from weakness," he'd said on the feed, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, "but to forge a peace that endures." Billions watched from allied fringes to council core worlds. But then Lyle, his partner, the senator who'd stood by him through drafts and debates, stepped into the spotlight unannounced. The chamber doors hissed open mid-broadcast, Lyle's face a mask of betrayal. "Jonah's idealism blinds him," he declared, resignation letter projected beside him. "The protocol invites slaughter. I denounce it, and him, for costing us allies." The words landed like shrapnel, neutrals murmuring in the chat streams, support fracturing. Jonah's public integrity, his legacy, bled out in real time. He stood frozen as the feed cut, the chamber emptying to echoes. Lyle approached, eyes hard. "You trust institutions that devour us, Jonah. Realpolitik demands we fight dirty." "And become them?" Jonah shot back, flaw flaring. Idealism that underestimated the knife's edge. He cared for Lyle, for the protocol's soul, but silence now made him complicit. Political support gutted, he clutched the chip. Hand it to Mara for propaganda, wave it as defiance, rally the fleet, or hide it, preserve the slim chance of negotiation before restraint crumbled entirely. In the detention wing of the human carrier Vanguard, Rook Hale slumped against the bulkhead, wrists chafed from the restraints. The military courts had moved fast, disobeying orders on drift, compromising Sarah's extraction. His friend pulled from the line, alive but broken. The op half saved, but at what price? Camaraderie under fire meant nothing when panic overrode protocol. The interrogator, a stern-faced major, paced outside the force field. You jeopardized the network, Hale. For one man. Hale met her gaze, voice rough. Orders be damned. We leave our own, what's left. His choice irrational, born of fear-laced loyalty, but it rippled. Sarah's feeds now viral, prisoners' faces haunting broadcasts, forcing the council to justify their spectacles. Deeper in the fleet's intel core, analysts pieced the puzzle. Sarah's documents flooded in. Executions staged, blockades tightening. Human signals confirmed it. Chancellor Elir's play. Escalate incidents, provoke the break. Push humans to abandon moral restraint. Watch allies distance as the spiral widened. Elir's doctrinaire cruelty saw mercy as the fracture point. His fear of council fragmentation drove the cruelty, treating humans as the wedge. Mara reviewed the brief in her quarters, the ship bell from her old flagship, a relic from Voss's command, tolling softly in the corner, reminder of costs paid. Jonah's appeal echoed on the comms, fractured by Lyle's knife. Sarah's report burned, prisoners processed, Hale detained. The strategy clear, Elir baiting total retaliation. She keyed the secure line to Jonah. Your protocols leverage now, diplomat, or we escalate alone. Jonah stared at the chip in his palm, the white flag fragment glinting like a promise or a lie. Give it up, fuel the propaganda fire, secure survival through defiance, or bury it deep, cling to negotiation's ghost, even as the colonies choked. The choice clawed at him. Moral restraint teetering on real politics blade. His fear crystallized. Complicity in the fall. The hum of the enclave faded, leaving only the weight in his hand. Jonah's fingers tightened around the chip, its edges biting into his skin like a fragment of shattered bone. The enclave's dim lights hummed overhead, casting long shadows across the scarred conference table where he'd drafted the damn thing months ago. Mercy protocol, a lifeline thrown into the void, now choking him. He couldn't hold it anymore, not with the council's envoys circling like vultures, whispering of reprisals that would glass New Harrow before dawn. Sarah would know what to do, she always did, even if it meant twisting the truth into something sharper. He slipped the chip into a shielded pouch and sealed it, the soft click echoing in the empty room. Footsteps approached from the corridor, deliberate, unhurried. Sarah Anvik emerged from the gloom, her operative's jacket scarred from too many extractions, eyes scanning him like he was a compromised asset. You look like hell, Jonah. What's the play? He held out the pouch without preamble. Keep this safe. Away from me, away from the diplomats. If it leaks now, we're done. Elir spins it as surrender and the colonies fracture. His voice cracked on the last word, the weight of Lyle's last message burning in his chest. Hold the line or we're no better than them. But holding meant watching civilians burn. Sarah took the pouch, her grip steady, but her gaze lingered on his face, reading the fracture lines. She was family to her network of shadows, but to him, a necessary blade. And if I need leverage, she tucked it into her inner pocket, already calculating routes out of the enclave. Then use it, but not yet. Jonah leaned against the table, the room's recycled air tasting stale. He trusted her, or at least, he trusted her survival instinct more than his own ideals. The sabotage on the outer relays, the one that nearly cost them the fleet's jump coordinates, she'd find a way to turn it back on them. Sarah nodded once, sharp as a knife edge, and vanished into the corridor. Jonah exhaled, the chip's absence a hollow ache. Complicity, the word clawed deeper now. In the underbelly of her safe house on the fringe station, Sarah synced the pouch to her neural link. The chip's data blooming in holographic fragments. Treaties, white flag protocols, the charred emblem of Earth's old UN banner. Jonah's ghost of a dream. But dreams didn't stop blockades. She pulled up the encrypted feeds from her operatives. Rook Hale's latest drop from the Solace Governor's compound. Proof buried in transaction logs. A council hardliner, Admiral Vosick, had staged the relay sabotage. Falsified logs, ghosted payments to mercenaries. Elir's hand all over it, prodding humanity into the rage he could crush. Sarah's flaw itched at her. Lie to allies, manipulate the board, all for the greater good. But this was truth, raw and jagged. She routed the leak through anonymous channels, bouncing it to neutral press nodes and coalition outposts. Let it spread like shrapnel. Elir's manipulation exposed, the council's mask cracking. Her network would pay for the trace. Operatives burned, maybe Hale himself if he got too close. But the chip stayed hidden, for now, across the void. In the council's obsidian spires on Illyria Prime, Chancellor Elir paced the command nexus, his elongated robes whispering against the polished floors. The air thrummed with holographic star maps, red icons pulsing over human supply lines. Dominance through deterrence. That was his creed, the council's spine. Mercy, a virus weakening the order he'd forged from fractured stars. His aides bowed low as he halted, eyes narrowing at the latest intercept. A humanitarian convoy, fat with meds and evac shuttles threading toward the blockaded rim worlds. Strike it, Elir commanded, voice like grinding stone. Punitive, no survivors to spin tales. His flaw burned in him. Cruelty as doctrine, treating restraint as the first crack in the wall. The council couldn't fragment, not under his watch. He cared for its legacy. The systems bound to his control. Fear of weakness gnawed deeper than any blade. The order rippled out, strike cruisers ghosting from ambush vectors. But Mara Voss was waiting, aboard the Indomitable, Mara's flagship. The bridge thrummed with the low growl of engines straining against the void's pull. She stood at the tactical holotable, her crew a tight knot of scarred veterans, faces etched from too many skirmishes, eyes locked on her like she was the only anchor. The ship bell from her old command hung in the corner, tolled once for every lost soul. It hadn't rung in hours, but the silence screamed. Convoys lighting up, her TAC officer murmured, fingers dancing over consoles. Council signatures inbound, 3 cruisers flanking hard. Mara's jaw set, utilitarianism carving her decisions cold. Protect the worlds, the habitats. Earth's orbitals couldn't fall, not on her watch. Diplomacy, Jonah's folly, devaluing the fight. Intercept vector, full burn, shields to forward arcs. We're taking prisoners if we can, no clean kills. Her crew moved like extensions of her will, camaraderie forged in the fire of odds stacked against them. Human ingenuity, jury-rigged jammers, predictive algorithms born from desperate sims. The Indomitable surged, railguns spitting kinetic fury. Alarms wailed as council beams grazed the hull, but Mara's feint, dumping decoy flares laced with EMP bursts, shattered their formation. One cruiser crumpled, venting atmosphere, the others scattered. Boarding teams mag-locked onto the lead vessel, breaching in a storm of suppressed fire and zero-G grapples. Mara watched the feed, breath steady. Her second in command, Ruiz, dragged the captured envoy into the brig, the Illyrian's robes torn, eyes wide with something like awe. "You humans, you twist the stars to your will." The envoy spat protocols, but under pressure cracked. "The shield program, it's no defense. Civilian targeted. Illyrs rolling it out, null fields over colonies, starving them from orbit. Mercy won't stop it." Mara's fear coiled tighter. Losing command meant losing everything. "Civilians first." She nodded to Ruiz. "Interrogate deeper. We adapt." Word of the intercept spread like plasma fire, but it couldn't stem the rot closer to home. On Solace, the Coalition's fringe jewel, Governor Tarrant stared at the encrypted slate in his office, the Council's payment shimmering in off-world credits. Enough to fortify his world, buy loyalty from the wavering houses. He cared for Solace's survival. But his flaw, greed masked as pragmatism, blinded him to the chains. Publicly, he'd denounced the human offensive, split the fragile alliance. Realpolitik over restraint. The broadcast went live from his balcony, overlooking the domed cities. The Coalition's aggression invites annihilation. Solace stands with the Council for peace. Gasps rippled through the feeds, outposts fracturing, some rallying to him, others to Voss's fleet. Jonah watched from the Enclave, gut twisting. Terran's betrayal, fueled by Ealer's bribes, tore the Mercy Protocol's last threads. But shadows moved faster. Rook Hale, Sarah's operative, lean, haunted from years in the black, slipped his detention on a Solace fringe outpost. Framed for a smuggling run, but really, he'd sniffed the governor's rot. Hale's motive burned simple, payback for a lost team on the rim. His family in all but blood. He ghosted through maintenance vents. Pulse knife humming, Terran's speech ended in a spray of blood. Hale struck from the crowd, blade finding the throat mid-applause. Chaos erupted, security swarms, screams echoing off the domes. Hale vanished into the Undercity, but the backlash ignited like a supernova. Coalition feeds screamed assassination, fingers pointing to human radicals. Jonah's name surfaced in whispers, his diplomatic ties to fringe ops, his instability in pushing Mercy. Implicated as accessory, the charges a noose tightening. Lyle's face flashed in his mind, the senator's plea for integrity now a joke. Jonah's fear peaked. Silence meant complicity, speech meant fracture. Mara felt the quake in her command net. Solace splitting, Terran dead, Coalition cohesion crumbling like dry earth. But she couldn't wait. The blockaded colony of Epsilon Drift screamed for rescue. Council pickets choking their air. High risk, thread the needle through minefields, outgun the bastards with half the cruisers. "Form up," Mara barked on the bridge, the bell tolling once as they undocked. A somber knell for what was coming. Her fleet, patchwork of refitted haulers and spearhead destroyers. Ingenuity against the odds. They hit the blockade at flank speed. Tactics brutal. Feigned retreat drawing fire. Then counter with clustered torpedoes laced with human-coded viruses to blind sensors. The cost came swift. 2 cruisers shredded, Vanguard venting crew to the void, relentless, cracking under beam fire. Screams over comms, camaraderie snapping into grief. Mara's hands shook on the console, but she pushed, board the pickets. Get the evac shuttles out. Her teams fought deck by deck, zero-G brawls leaving blood globules drifting. They broke the line, colony pods streaming free, but the sacrifices etched deeper. Faces she'd shared rations with, now ghosts. In the aftermath, as the fleet limped to rally point, Mara stepped onto the observation deck. The Mercy chip, retrieved from a downed envoy's cache, felt heavy in her palm. Its white flag fragment charred from some forgotten blast mocked her. Mercy withdrawn. She activated the external cam, broadcasting fleet-wide and to the nets, the chip igniting in a flare of plasma, ashes scattering into the stars. No more flags, we fight for survival. Earned defiance, scarred and raw. Her crew watched in silence, the bell tolling thrice for the lost. Sarah's safe house feeds lit up with the burn. Jonah's legacy ash. But her network dug deeper, operatives risking exposure for scraps. The intel hit like a gut punch. Illyr's planetary quarantine device, buried in Illyria's vaults. Activate in days unless the Council clinched advantage. Sealing worlds in stasis fields, dooming billions to slow death. Sarah's fear spiked, her people exposed, the network fracturing if she pushed. But she routed it to Mara, encrypted tight. Aboard the Indomitable, Mara received the ping mid-debrief, Ruiz's face paling beside her, coalition collapsing, outposts defecting, Terran's death a rallying cry for Illyr's hardliners. The confirmation scrolled, quarantine online in 48 hours. No mercy left to burn. The bell tolled again, a dirge for what came next. Mara Voss gripped the edge of the briefing table, the cold metal biting into her palms as the holographic display flickered with the quarantine lattice's schematics. 48 hours. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fresh kill. Ruiz stood frozen beside her, his usual sharp banter silenced by the pallor creeping up his neck. The bridge crew watched her, eyes hollowed by the grind of endless alerts. Defections rippling through the outer colonies, Illyr's propaganda twisting Terran's assassination into a martyr's blaze. "No more waiting," Mara said, her voice cutting through the hum of consoles. "Operation Withhold launches now. We hit the lattice nodes before they seal us in like rats." Affirmatives rippled back, terse and mechanical. She could feel the weight of their trust, the fragile thread holding the fleet together after the Council's rejection of the Mercy Protocol. No grand speeches, just the grind of survival. Mara straightened, signaling the helm. The Indomitable shuddered as engines flared, slipping into formation with the strike force. 6 corvettes and a pair of stealth bombers, ghosts in the void. Her plan was simple, brutal. Punch through the outer perimeter, sabotage the primary control node at Epsilon Relay. Human ingenuity against Illyr's ironclad deterrence. If they failed, the lattice would choke off every supply line to the core worlds, starving billions. As the fleet accelerated toward the relay's nebula-shrouded approach, Mara's mind raced through contingencies. The lattice wasn't just a barrier, it was a web of energy fields laced with automated defenses, designed to quarantine rogue elements, like humanity without a shot fired. But intel from Sarah's network painted it vulnerable at the node, overloaded relays if you knew where to cut. Mara trusted that intel like she trusted her own pulse under fire. Anything less, and New Harrow's coastal lights would flicker out, her crew's families reduced to ghosts. Hours blurred into the tense rhythm of evasion. Drones skimmed the fleet's flanks, probing for Council patrols. Ruiz manned tactics, his fingers dancing over projections, picking up echoes, 3 cruisers on intercept, Illyr signatures. "Evade and flank," Mara ordered. "Bomber wing, prep EMP bursts. We don't engage unless they force it." The void erupted in silent fury. Council ships loomed from the nebula's haze, their hulls gleaming like predatory scales. Mara watched the dance unfold, her corvettes weaving through debris fields. Bombers loosing pulses that fried sensor arrays without drawing blood. Camaraderie under fire, Ruiz muttering curses as he synced fire patterns, a junior officer sharing a grim nod with his gunner. No heroes, just men and women clawing for an edge. They broke through, the relay station swelling on screens, a spindly lattice of spires orbiting a gas giant's fury. But as the Indomitable closed, a encrypted burst hit comms. Sarah, deep in the node's underbelly, Sarah Anvik moved like a shadow through the access vents, her suit's camouflage blending with the pulsing conduits. The air recyclers hummed a monotonous dirge, masking her breaths. Infiltration was her art: lie, manipulate, extract. But this run felt heavier, the stakes gnawing at her gut. Her network's operatives were scattered, some already ghosts after Alir's purges. She couldn't lose them, not to a botched op. The control chamber loomed ahead, guarded by automated sentries. Sarah planted a microcharge on the last grate, slipping in silent. Hollow panels glowed with lattice diagnostics, activation sequences syncing across sectors. Her glove interface hacked in, data flooding her visor. But then the anomaly. Schematics shifted, revealing a failsafe. Full activation demanded a synchronized purge. Overloads in human supply depots and council outposts alike. Millions caught in the crossfire, not quarantine, annihilation. Alir's cruelty dressed as order, kill to contain, sacrifice his own to break ours. Sarah's stomach twisted. This changed everything. She keyed her comm, voice a whisper. "Voss, it's a trap. Activation's wired to blow both sides. Pull back." Static swallowed her words. Jamming fields. She cursed, rigging the sabotage drone anyway, but doubt clawed. Expose this and her network's cover shattered. Lie about it, save lives now, damn the fallout. Her flaw, always the greater good, even if it meant burning bridges. Back on the Indomitable, Mara's console lit with the partial transmission. Sarah's in, partial hit, says it's rigged. Ruiz's face tightened. We abort. No. Mara's jaw set. The fleet was committed, corvettes already drawing fire. Pull out and the lattice sealed them anyway. Push and they might crack it. Utilitarianism cold as vacuum. The math favored the strike. Light years away, in the Council's gleaming citadel, Jonah Cade paced the diplomatic chamber, the charred fragment of the Mercy Protocol chip clutched in his fist. The broadcast feed crackled, human news nets carrying his plea. This strike risks everything. Operation Withhold isn't defense, it's provocation. Civilian lives on both sides hang in the balance. I urge Commander Voss to stand down. Mercy isn't weakness, it's our last claim to humanity. His words echoed hollow. Senator Lyle's hand on his shoulder was a faint anchor, but the rift was tearing open. Diplomats who'd once backed the protocol now peeled away, whispering of survival over symbols. Jonah's idealism burned, a flaw that blinded him to the knives at his back. He trusted institutions, believed the council could be swayed. But Alir's rejection had shattered that. Now halting Mara meant defying the military, fracturing what unity remained. His fear coiled complicity in the coming blood if he failed. The response came swift, a secure line from the Indomitable. Mara's face filled the screen, etched with strain. Jonah, your broadcast is dividing us. The lattice activates in hours. We hold fire and Earth starves. It's murder disguised as necessity, Jonah shot back, voice cracking. Sarah's intel shows mutual destruction. Pull back, I'll negotiate a delay. Mara's eyes hardened. Negotiate with what? Alir's already moving. The line cut, leaving Jonah staring at the chip's blackened edge. The rift gaped, military surging forward, diplomats fracturing. His legacy, the protocol, reduced to ash in his palm. Alir's command deck thrummed with calculated malice. The Chancellor surveyed his fleets arrayed like spears, his elongated features impassive. Order demanded deterrence. Mercy was the crack that invited chaos. His fear of fragmentation, of weakness, drove him. Target their supply convoys, he intoned to his admirals. Ram them, show no quarter. The orders cascaded. Council cruisers surged, engines blazing toward human freighters, lumbering through the outer lanes. Alarms wailed on those civilian haulers, grain for New Harrow, meds for the orbitals. Captains screamed evasive, but the rams were surgical, hulls crumpling in silent detonations, debris fields blooming. In the chaos, Rook Hale's shuttle darted through the fray. A grizzled engineer from Mara's old squadron, he'd volunteered for the deep strike. Sabotage a lead cruiser to carve an attack corridor. No family left after Terran's fallout. Just duty, laced with the bitterness of lost chances. His flaw, a reckless loyalty that mistook sacrifice for redemption. Hale's team breached the cruiser's engineering bay amid the ramming volleys. Blaster fire scorched the air as they planted charges on the core. "Go, go!" Hale barked, covering their exit. A Council Marine rounded the corner, plasma bolt searing Hale's shoulder. He fired back, dropping the guard, but the alarm screamed lockdown. "Get clear!" Hale growled into comms. "Detonating now!" His team bolted for the shuttle. Hale lingered, rigging the final sequence. The cruiser bucked as rams shook its frame. Human convoys dying to buy this moment. He hit the trigger. The core ignited, a chain reaction ripping the ship apart. The blast wave carved a gaping corridor through the Council line, debris shielding the human fleet's advance. Hale's last transmission. Corridor open for new Harrow. Then silence. Mara felt the loss like a gut punch, another name etched on the bell's toll. With the path cleared, Mara's strike force plunged toward the node. Sarah's drone had weakened the outer shields, but defenses swarmed, fighter swarms and turret grids, lighting the void. "All ships, focus fire on the spires," Mara commanded. "Bomber wing, deliver the payload." The battle was a grinder. Corvettes trading volleys, hull breaches venting crew to the black. Ruiz coordinated from her side, sweat beading as he plotted trajectories. Nodes at 60%, holding. Sarah emerged from the vents, linking with the assault. "Voss, the purge. It's live if they trigger it manually." "Too late," Mara replied, authorizing the irreversible strike. "Fire everything." The bombers loosed torpedoes, slamming into the control node. Explosions chained across the lattice, fields collapsing in cascades of light. But the backlash hit hard. The node's orbit destabilized, gravitational tugs yanking it toward the adjacent neutral star station, a diplomatic hub packed with envoys from fringe systems. Mara watched in horror as the station buckled, spires shearing off in the pull. Escape pods jettisoned, but too few. Debris clouds swallowed signals, diplomats from a dozen worlds. Gone. Human moral leverage, the protocol's ghost, vaporized in the fallout. Condemnations flooded the nets within hours. Human barbarism blared broadcasts from international systems. Lattice sabotage dooms neutrals, mercy forsaken. Alliances frayed further, outposts sealing borders against the unrestrained aggressors. In the diplomatic fallout, Jonah faced the tribunal. Hollow screens ringed him, faces stern from allied chambers. "Your opposition was futile," the lead judge intoned, "but your public stance sowed doubt. Stripped of office, effective immediately." Jonah stood unbowed, the charred chip heavy in his pocket, evidence of what they'd lost, not just the protocol, but the fragile claim to higher ground. Lyle's eyes met his, a silent vow amid the ruin. Complicit? Perhaps, but silence would have been worse. Aboard the Indomitable, Mara stared at the damage reports, the bell tolling softly in the background, a dirge for Rook, for the station, for the mercy they'd buried. Ruiz placed a hand on her shoulder, wordless. Then the broadcast pierced the haze. Alir's voice, smooth as venom. "The lattice falls, but order endures. Backup protocols engage. Human orbitals, Earth's fragile rings, will be next. Surrender, or watch your cradle shatter." Mara's fear ignited, the habitats she couldn't lose flashing in her mind. Billions in the void, her crew's homes. Retaliation screamed for blood, total war, no holds barred. But an encrypted ping flickered from Sarah's network. a council dissident whispering of defection, a gambit to sway the hardliners. Diplomatic, risky, unproven, her rigid calculus ward, escalate and survive, or reach for a thread of mercy that might snap. The choice clawed at her, the fleet waiting in the scarred void. The void pressed in like a bruise that wouldn't heal, the fleet's engines humming a low dirge in the silence. Commander Mara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the choice still raw in her gut. Strike now or watch New Harrow burn from afar. Her leg throbbed from an old wound, a reminder that hesitation had already cost too much. "All units initiate breach protocol," she said, her voice steady over the comms, cutting through the tension like a knife. The bridge crew moved as one, fingers dancing across consoles, their faces etched with the weariness of months in the black. The assault shuttle bucked as it slammed into the docking clamps of Alir's command citadel, a jagged fortress orbiting the neutral hub of Viridian Prime. Alarms wailed inside Mara's helmet, red lights strobing across her visor. She was first out, mag boots clamping to the deck as the breach charge blew the airlock wide. Shrapnel pinged off her armor, and the acrid tang of ruptured seals filled her suit's filters. "Flank left, suppress the corridor," she barked to her squad. 20 Marines, the last of her boarding team. Faces she knew better than her own family's. They pushed forward in a tight wedge, pulse rifles spitting blue fire into the shadows. Alir's guards, sleek insectile Illyrians with chitinous exosuits, swarmed from side vents, their plasma lances carving glowing scars into the bulkheads. Mara ducked a bolt that melted the edge of her pauldron, heat searing through to her skin. "Grenades now!" One of her Marines, Reyes, lobbed a cluster. The explosion ripped through 3 Illyrians, their screams a high-pitched whine over the tacknet. But they kept coming, relentless, their doctrine turning the citadel into a meat grinder. Deeper in, the command nexus loomed, a spherical chamber ringed with holographic emitters, pulsing data streams to the Council's fleets. Mara waved her team to cover positions behind overturned consoles. "Links here. Overload it." Her engineer, Patel, knelt by the core, splicing in the virus rig. Sweat beaded on his brow inside his helmet. Mara could see it on the shared feed. An Illyrian sniper's round punched through the deck plating, catching Patel in the chest. He slumped without a sound, rig half-plugged. "Finish it," Mara growled, firing her rifle one-handed while clamping pressure on her thigh. No time for grief. She charged the emitter array herself, boots pounding the grated floor. The air hummed with energy, the core's defenses sparking to life. An Illyrian officer lunged from a blind spot, blade extended. Its edge caught her calf as she twisted, severing servos and flesh in a spray of blood that her suit sealed just in time. Pain exploded up her leg, white-hot, but she drove her rifle butt into its faceplate, cracking it. The creature reeled, and she put 2 rounds through its visor. The rig beeped acceptance. Alarms blared, command link severed. Across the void, council ships stuttered, their coordinated fire faltering like a puppet with cut strings. But the cost hit hard. Half her squad down, bodies strewn in the corridor, Reyes dragging a wounded arm as he covered their retreat. Mara's leg buckled on the way out, forcing her to lean on a Marine's shoulder. "Evac now. We bought the time. Make it count." Back on the flagship, medbots swarmed her in the bay, lasers sealing the stump where her lower leg had been. She watched the feeds. Human squadrons exploiting the chaos, carving into the Council's flanks. But victory tasted like ash. New Harrow was safe for now, but the orbital habitats around Earth, they hung by threads of alloy and resolve. She couldn't lose them. Not after this. Sarah Anvik slipped through the underbelly of the Council's auxiliary station like a shadow in the maintenance ducts, her exosuit's stealth field bending light around her. The air recyclers hummed overhead, masking her breaths. Her network, those operatives she thought of as kin, had paved this path with risks, falsified IDs, bribed guards, a trail of bodies left just ambiguous enough to avoid full pursuit. But lies had a way of circling back, and she felt the weight of it now, a knot in her chest. The chamber ahead was a vault of secrets. Council delegates huddled around a projection table, their voices a murmur of fracturing unity. Elir's absence, thanks to Mara's strike, had cracked the facade. Sarah patched into the station's auxiliary net from a hidden node, her fingers flying over the wrist console. The exposé was ready, intercepted doctrines, raw data, showing Elir's orders to glass neutral worlds, to provoke humans into breaking first. Not defense, but engineered escalation. Her flaw stared back at her in the code. Manipulation for the greater good. But what if it shattered the very civilians she aimed to shield? She triggered the burst transmission, anonymous but irrefutable, flooding their secure channels. Holograms flickered to life, unbidden, Elir's voice echoing. Mercy invites predation. Strike until they beg. Gasps rippled through the room. A Vexari delegate recoiled, tentacles twitching. This voids the charter. Sarah watched from her perch, heart pounding. Her lead operative, Kai, whispered over comms, "They're calling for halt. Civilian zones first." The ceasefire propagated like a shockwave, orders cascading to frontier fleets, halting bombardments on hab domes and agri-colonies. Sarah's network extracted concessions, conditional halt on human borders, no reprisals for the Citadel strike. But as she exfiltrated, dodging patrols roused by the leak, doubt gnawed. Kai's signal cut mid-sentence. Ambush, lost. She pushed it down, focusing on the win. Her family of shadows was fraying, but the intel had bought breathing room. At what price to her soul? From the bridge of the lead destroyer, Mara Voss monitored the fallout, her new prosthetic leg humming faintly as she shifted weight. The fleet had pivoted hard after the Citadel breach, ingenuity turning desperation into precision. Human engineers had jury-rigged drone swarms, cheap, expendable, loaded with EMP bursts to shred the Council's propaganda arrays. Orbital broadcasters spewing lies about human aggression, twisting the Mercy Protocol into a joke. Targets acquired, the weapons officer reported, voice tight. Mara nodded. Fire. Missiles streaked out, silent in the void, slamming into relay stations. Hollow feeds across a dozen systems glitched and died, the Council's narrative crumbling. But the final strike was uglier. Viridia Secundus, the contested neutral world, Elir's staging ground, bristling with hidden shipyards, lit up on scans. It wasn't just infrastructure, civilians from splinter factions huddled there, pawns in the game. Collateral's too high, a junior officer muttered, eyes on the Sims. Mara met his gaze, her utilitarianism a cold blade. They chose sides when they harbored the fleets. We end this now, or it drags on. The barrage unleashed, kinetic rods from railguns, turning shipyards to slag, but the overkill rippled outward. Cities vaporized in firestorms, escape pods winking out like fireflies in a gale. Global outrage erupted, feeds from allied worlds screaming betrayal, human diplomatic envoys disavowed on the spot, credibility shattered. Mara felt the fracture in her bones, the cost of survival etching deeper scars. Her crew watched her, silent, camaraderie forged in the fire of necessity. No cheers, just the grind of what they'd become. Jonah Cade stood amid the ruins of the diplomatic enclave on Viridia Prime, the air thick with dust and the metallic bite of plasma residue. His hands trembled as he clutched the Mercy Protocol chip, its casing scorched from the initial rejection broadcast that had ignited this spiral. Idealism had blinded him, trusting the Council, believing symbols could outlast spite. Now survivors gathered human aids, neutral envoys, faces hollowed by loss. Senator Lyle's voice echoed in his mind, a ghost urging restraint, but Lyle was gone, caught in the reprisals Jonah's silence hadn't prevented. The protocol, it was meant to be a bridge, he said, voice cracking as he held out the chip. A young aide took it, eyes wide. Keep it, guard what it stood for. Exile loomed. Earth's council had stripped his rank, branding him a relic of failed mercy. But in relinquishing it, Jonah felt a shift. No longer the drafter, but the keeper of its charred memory. The white flag fragment, rusted and pitted from some forgotten skirmish, weighed heavy in his pocket, a talisman of what they'd lost. He turned from the Enclave, steps heavy, the idealist hardening into something resolute, haunted. Elir's capture came swift after the Citadel fall. Mara's boarding data had pinpointed his escape shuttle. Interceptors ran it down in the asteroid belts, Marines storming the wreckage. He emerged snarling, mandibles clicking defiance, but bound in human restraints, his doctrinaire cruelty laid bare. The Council's chambers dissolved into chaos, hostile factions, led by hardliners like the Krell, vowing vengeance, conciliatory ones swayed by Sarah's exposé, suing for armistice, the frontier militarized overnight, patrols thickening, borders hardening into walls of sensors and guns, alliances wounded, trust a casualty like so many crews. Back on Earth's orbital ring, the survivors gathered under the vast curve of the habitat network, stars wheeling beyond the viewports. Mara limped forward on her prosthetic, crew at her flanks, the weight of command heavier now. Jonah was there too, exiled, be damned, his face lined with the protocol's ghost. They approached the central plaza, where the rusted white flag fragment waited on a plinth, salvaged from Mara's flagship bell, its edges blackened by fire. No speeches. Mara affixed it herself, bolts clicking into place. The declaration followed via tight beam to all human worlds. Mercy no longer default, earned, if at all. The ring's lights dimmed in solemnity, a frontier forever scarred. Weeks later, in the dim confines of a neutral station outpost, Jonah Cade received the encrypted ping, a covert envoy from a council splinter, conciliatory voices fractured but reaching out. The message unfolded. Conditional reconciliation, borders redrawn, reparations for Viridia, mercy on their terms. He stared at the hollow, the chip's legacy burning in his palm. Reopen the door, risk the spiral anew, or enforce withdrawal, seal the wound with iron. The choice clawed at him, the void waiting beyond.